It was the kind of retirement home people dreamed of. Manicured lawns, rocking chairs on the porch, nurses with gentle voices and soft hands. Families called it a blessing, patients called it peace. But peace is a tricky thing. Easy to fake, hard to hold. So when a therapy dog named Scout suddenly stopped mid-walk and let out a deep, bone-shaking growl at the end of a quiet hallway, the illusion cracked just a little. Scout wasn't just any dog. He was a retired canine. 6 years on the force, over 50 busts, a hero more times than anyone could count. Now graying around the muzzle and a little stiff in the hips, Scout spent his days comforting the elderly at Willowbrook Retirement Home. He was calm, gentle, predictable, until that Tuesday afternoon. It started like any other day. Sunlight poured through the tall windows in room 208, where Miss Margaret hummed old jazz songs to herself. Nurses wheeled carts down the halls. The air smelled faintly of oatmeal and lemon disinfectant, and Scout, faithful as ever, padded along beside Rachel, a 26-year-old nurse fresh out of a difficult internship and still learning the rhythm of this strange, peaceful place. "Come on, buddy," Rachel said, tugging his leash gently as they made their way past the West Wing, an older part of the building rarely used these days. That's when Scout stopped. He didn't just pause. He froze, hackles raised, body rigid, eyes locked on a door at the far end of the hallway. Room 318. The door was old, heavy. It didn't match the others. A dusty little plaque hung crooked on the frame, but the name had been scratched off. Scout let out a growl so low it made Rachel's stomach twist. "Hey, what's wrong?" she whispered, crouching beside him. He didn't respond, not even a tail wag. His nose twitched, tracking something Rachel couldn't see. Then he barked once, loud, sharp, urgent. Rachel had never heard him bark like that. A nearby nurse poked her head out of a room, annoyed. "Everything okay down there?" Yeah, sorry," Rachel said quickly. "Just Scout being weird." The nurse frowned. "Don't linger near that door. It's sealed for a reason." Rachel nodded, tugged Scout's leash, and walked on, but Scout kept looking back. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She tried to shrug it off. Dogs bark, old buildings creak, maybe a mouse, a smell, something benign. But the way Scout stood, like a soldier back on duty, kept replaying in her mind. She worked the overnight shift again on Thursday. Scout seemed restless from the moment they walked in. He usually greeted patients one by one, offering his head for a scratch or gently nudging a hand with his snout. But not tonight. He kept pulling toward the West Wing. Rachel didn't want to admit it, but part of her was curious. Room 318 wasn't on any of the floor maps. She'd checked, and when she asked Mrs. Patterson, the night supervisor, the older woman had replied with a firm, "Don't worry about it. Some rooms are just too far gone." Too far gone. What did that even mean? By 1:30 a.m., the halls were quiet. The only sounds were the soft hum of air conditioning and the occasional beep of a heart monitor from the medical wing. Rachel walked Scout one last time before bed, and again he dragged her to that same door. Only this time, he wouldn't stop barking. 3 short bursts. Pause. 1 long howl. Rachel felt a chill down her spine. "Stop it, Scout," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "You're going to wake everybody." But Scout wouldn't stop. That's when she noticed it, the faintest light seeping out from the crack under the door. Her heart skipped. No patients were assigned to that wing. No nurses were posted past room 310. And yet there was light, faint, flickering, like a lamp left on or a TV set to static. She reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. She bent down and peered through the old keyhole, half expecting to see nothing at all. But what she saw sent her reeling back. A shadow moved across the room, slow, dragging something. The shape was vaguely human, but hunched, slouched, like something had been broken and never quite healed. Scout snarled, teeth bared. Something was in that room. Love real-life animal heroes. Support their stories by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Saved by Tales, and never miss a new episode of Courage and Compassion. Rachel didn't tell anyone the next morning. Not yet. She needed to understand what she saw, what Scout had sensed. But she started asking questions quietly, casually. "Hey, do we ever use the West Wing for storage or something?" Mrs. Patterson's face tightened. Best to stay where you're assigned, sweetheart. I thought I saw a light on in one of those rooms. The older nurse smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Old wiring, don't worry about it. Rachel nodded, but she started taking notes. Then she checked the patient records. Every room on the West Wing, 311 to 320, was listed as vacant or under renovation. But when she looked deeper into the facility's electronic logs, she found something strange. 3 separate medication deliveries, all marked for rooms in that wing. But no patients, no entries, no ID numbers, no intake files, just blank spots in the system. Someone or something was living in that hallway. The following Tuesday, she came in early. Scout was waiting by the door, already pacing. Rachel brought a flashlight this time, and a voice recorder tucked into her scrubs. She didn't care if she was fired. At 2 a.m., she returned. The hallway was silent, the moonlight barely lit, dust dancing in the air. Scout walked slowly beside her, head low, ears twitching. The light was on again. This time she tried something different. She crouched beside the door and whispered, "Hello? Is someone in there?" No answer, but the light flickered again, and Scout stiffened. Then a sound, not a voice, not footsteps, breathing, shallow, raspy, and close. Rachel's heart pounded. She backed away slowly, Scout shielding her body with his own. Then the breathing stopped. Just like that. Silence. She turned and walked away, trying to appear calm. But every hair on her arms was standing up. The next morning, Rachel went to the director of the facility, Mr. Daniels. He was a tall man with silver hair and an air of corporate calm, the kind of calm that made you feel like nothing was ever urgent, even when it was. She told him everything: the barking, the movement, the flickering light, the missing patient logs. He listened, smiled, and said, "You've been working a lot of night shifts, Rachel. Sometimes the mind plays tricks. I saw someone," she insisted. "And Scout, it's an old building," he interrupted, "full of drafts and electrical hiccups. We appreciate your concern, but there's nothing to worry about." She left the office more frustrated than ever. Scout, however, wasn't done. Later that day, as a maintenance worker passed by with a tool cart, Scout lunged, not to attack, but to grab something. Rachel ran over just in time to see Scout tugging a set of keys off the man's belt. And as she picked them up, she saw one had a small rusted label, 318. Rachel didn't sleep after her shift ended. She sat in her car for nearly an hour, gripping the set of keys Scout had snatched like a lifeline. Her thoughts spiraled. Why would maintenance carry a key to a room that was supposed to be sealed off? And why was it unlabeled in the records, but marked on this key with a faint rusted tag that read 318? She glanced over at Scout, curled up on the passenger seat, snoring softly. Even in rest, his ears twitched at every sound. She couldn't explain it, but the more time she spent with Scout, the more she trusted his instincts over any of the humans she worked with. By the time her next night shift began, she had made up her mind. She was going back in. The hallway to the West Wing was silent, the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful. It was unnatural, like sound itself refused to enter. Rachel felt the chill in her bones the moment she crossed the threshold. Scout walked beside her again, unusually alert, each paw step deliberate. She held the ring of keys tightly, using her flashlight sparingly to avoid attention. Most of the staff was either off duty or asleep. It was now or never. When they reached room 318, Scout stopped and sat, not tense, not aggressive, just waiting, like he knew this moment had to happen. Rachel took a breath, selected the key, and turned it slowly in the lock. Click. The door gave a soft groan as it opened. The smell hit her first, stale, like old sweat and cleaning chemicals that hadn't masked the decay. Her flashlight trembled in her hand. She stepped inside. The room was larger than she'd expected. It wasn't a patient room. Not really. The wallpaper was peeling. The floorboards creaked. But what stood out was that it was lived in. There were 2 narrow hospital beds, both made, though one had a deep indentation like someone had been lying in it for hours. An old IV stand rested by the wall. A TV mounted high in the corner flickered with static, and on the far side, a man in a wheelchair, unmoving, facing the wall. Rachel's breath caught. "Sir," she said quietly. No response. She edged forward, heart pounding. Scout let out a low growl, staying behind her near the door. She took another step. The man stirred. He didn't turn, but he raised one hand slowly, shakily, and pointed at the nightstand beside him. Rachel blinked. She walked over carefully, and opened the drawer. Inside, she found a small leather-bound notebook. No name on the cover, just old worn edges and cracked binding. The man finally spoke, his voice dry like he hadn't used it in days. "He thinks no one remembers us." Rachel looked at him. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken. He looked 80, maybe 90, but there was something alive in his gaze, something sharp. "Who are you?" she asked. His lips barely moved. "You already know." She didn't, but something about the way he said it chilled her. She flipped open the notebook. The first page read, "They were supposed to be dead." Rachel didn't take the notebook right away. She closed it, set it back where she found it, and backed out slowly. Her instinct screamed that she had stayed too long. As the door clicked shut behind her, Scout stood and pressed his body against her legs, protective, grounding. She didn't sleep when she got home. Instead, she searched through every database she had access to. Health records, old employment rosters, even news archives. Nothing came up under room 318, or under the name she eventually found scribbled on the inside, back cover of the notebook. Marcus H. Brooks. No records, no emergency contact, no patient number, no billing history. It was like the man in that room didn't exist. She tried again the next day, asking a different nurse, one who'd only been there a few months. "Oh, that room," the nurse replied. "They said some ex-vet stays there when his family visits from out of town. I never saw him though." "Ex-vet? Yeah, or maybe a priest. I don't know. The stories don't match." Rachel stopped asking after that. Every answer was a new lie. That weekend, Rachel met up with an old friend, Tyler, who worked in healthcare compliance. She didn't tell him everything, just enough. Could a nursing facility have unregistered patients? She asked over coffee. He raised an eyebrow. If they're hiding patients, that's a major felony. Fraud, abuse, illegal confinement. Why? Rachel hesitated, then said, "Let's say someone finds a patient with no record, no billing file, no social or ID. What would happen?" He leaned in. "You'd call the state immediately." She nodded, but she didn't. Not yet. Because something about the way Marcus had pointed to that notebook, it felt like there was more. Like this wasn't just fraud. It was deeper, darker. She had to know what they were hiding. Sunday night, Rachel returned to room 308. The key slipped into the lock more easily this time, as if the door was waiting for her. Marcus was sitting in the same spot. He didn't turn when she entered, but he spoke. "You came back." "I read a little," she said, holding up the notebook. "It's hard to believe." "Then don't believe. Look." He pointed again, this time to a curtain at the far side of the room. Behind it, Rachel found a door, a second door. Metal, heavy, like something you'd find in a hospital basement or a military facility. It had a biometric scanner beside it. Not a key card, a scanner. "What is this?" she whispered. Marcus gave a dry chuckle. "That's where the others are." Rachel stared at the scanner. "No one else ever comes in here," she said, half to herself. "They can't," he replied. "They don't have the key." He nodded at Scout. Rachel blinked. Scout, not the dog, the name. It was a code once, before they retired the program. "What program?" He turned his chair slightly, finally facing her. "The program they buried, just like us." She took a step back, heart pounding. What were they doing here? Marcus's eyes locked onto hers, trying to forget what they did. Rachel left that night with the notebook in hand. Inside were names, dates. Some were just numbers, others had red ink slashed across them. One stood out, July 17, 2009. Subject 15I, terminated. And beneath that, written in shaky looping handwriting, not terminated, moved. Room 319. Her eyes widened. Room 319 was the room next to Marcus's. On every official record, it was listed as empty, but that metal door, the scanner, she wasn't just dealing with unlisted patients. There were hidden rooms. The next morning, Rachel arrived early. She made coffee, smiled at the other nurses, played along. But all the while, she was watching. At 10:45 a.m., a man in a brown suit arrived. He carried no badge, no stethoscope. He didn't check in. Rachel watched him walk quietly toward the West Wing and disappear into room 319. 10 minutes later, he came out holding a silver briefcase. Rachel saw the side of his neck, a small scar, like something had been implanted and later removed. He didn't look like a doctor. He looked like someone who erased things. Scout growled from across the hallway. Rachel didn't stop him this time. Rachel couldn't stop thinking about the man in the brown suit. No ID, no clipboard, no words spoken, just in and out, clean, quiet, practiced, and the silver briefcase. She couldn't shake the image. It didn't belong in a retirement home. It belonged in a government facility, or a movie, where people disappeared and nobody asked questions. Scout hadn't taken his eyes off that hallway the entire day. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't lay down, just stood like a statue, eyes fixed on room 319. That night, Rachel made a decision she never thought she'd make. She clocked out, but she didn't leave. She hid. She waited behind the storage shelves in the laundry room, the one place without security cameras. She could hear the hum of machines and the occasional squeak of a rolling cart as night staff moved around. Midnight came and went. 1 a.m., then she heard it. Footsteps, soft even, not a nurse, not in those shoes. She peered through the crack in the door just in time to see him again. The man in the brown suit, heading down the West Wing. Same routine, briefcase in hand. He used something on his wrist, a dark band, maybe a biometric reader, and entered room 319, without a sound. Rachel counted every second. 5 minutes, 10, 15. At minute 20, the door opened again. The man walked out empty-handed, gone. Rachel waited 10 more minutes before she moved. Room 319 was different from room 318. Cleaner, colder. The overhead light was harsh, sterile, white. There was only one bed, one chair, and strapped to the bed with thick leather cuffs at the ankles and wrists was a woman, pale skin, shaved head, thin, frighteningly so, but alive. She was awake, staring straight at the ceiling, not blinking, not reacting. Rachel rushed to her side. "Hey, can you hear me?" The woman's mouth twitched just a little, but it was something. "I'm Rachel," she whispered, glancing toward the door. "I'm a nurse here. What's your name?" A pause. Then the woman whispered something so soft Rachel had to lean in close to hear it. Subject 15. Rachel's heart stopped. That's what the notebook had said. Subject 15. AM terminated. But this woman, she was right here, alive. Rachel reached for the restraints. Scout barked once, sharp and low. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Rachel froze, her hands hovering over the leather straps. Then she slipped backward, into the small supply closet in the corner of the room, barely wide enough to fit her, and Scout. She turned off her flashlight, and held her breath. The door opened. 2 people entered, not the man in the brown suit this time. These were orderlies, faceless, blank, moving like robots. They didn't speak. One adjusted the IV line, the other checked the monitor. "She's stable," one of them mumbled. "No more than 48 hours. The other nodded. "Let her sleep." Then they left. Rachel waited 5 minutes, then 10. When she was sure they were gone, she emerged and rushed to the bed. "Hang in there," she whispered. "I'm coming back for you." That morning, she called Tyler. "All right," he said over the phone, voice tense. "Let's say you found a hidden patient. You're sure she's not listed anywhere?" "She's not," Rachel replied. "She doesn't have a chart. There's a metal door connecting from 318. There's something underground." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Then you need to leave." "I can't." "Yes you can," he said. "Rachel, this sounds bigger than elder care fraud. You're talking about illegal detainment, maybe even experimentation. If you get caught, I can't leave her there, Rachel said, voice firm. She didn't tell him about the notebook. She didn't tell him she had taken it with her that night. That evening, she stayed late again, openly this time, said she was picking up an extra shift. The staff had grown used to her now. No one questioned it. But as she passed the nurse's station, she overheard something that made her blood run cold. They're moving her tonight, Mrs. Patterson said to another nurse. Corporate orders. To where? Doesn't say. Rachel kept walking, but she knew what it meant. They were getting rid of subject 15. Whether that meant moving her or silencing her forever, Rachel didn't care. She had to act. She waited until just after 2 a.m. Scout was ready, waiting beside the West Wing door, like he understood everything. She used the stolen key to enter room 318, then slipped through the metal door Marcus had shown her. This time, she brought a portable scanner she borrowed from the front desk, and to her shock, it worked. The scanner blinked green. Access granted. The door to 319 clicked open from the inside. The woman was still there, but this time, her eyes followed Rachel as she entered. You came back, she whispered. I'm getting you out of here. Rachel undid the straps. The woman didn't resist. She moved slowly, like someone who hadn't walked in weeks. Scout stood on alert but didn't bark. He stayed beside them as they crept toward the hallway. That's when the alarms went off. Not fire alarms. Security. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. A low siren echoed through the halls. They ran. Rachel held the woman up as best she could. Scout barked twice, warning barks, and darted ahead, scouting. When they reached the emergency stairwell, Rachel nearly cried with relief, until the door refused to open. Locked. Of course it was. Then Scout ran forward, growling at the elevator doors. They were already opening. 2 men in black uniforms stepped out, tasers drawn. Rachel stepped in front of the woman, shielding her. Don't move, one of the men barked. Scout lunged. He didn't attack. He grabbed one of their arms hard, and yanked, throwing the man off balance. The other tried to raise his taser, but Scout turned on him, growling, eyes locked. The distraction was enough. Rachel yanked the fire alarm. Sprinklers went off across the entire facility. Screams, chaos. The elevator jammed, lights flickered. They had seconds. She dragged the woman back through the hallway. Then suddenly, a miracle. Marcus. He was at the end of the hall, waving frantically toward a side exit Rachel hadn't noticed before. This way, he yelled. They burst through the side door, and into the cold night. Marcus slammed it behind them. Scout stayed back a second longer, growling, guarding, then bolted after them. They didn't stop running until they reached Rachel's car 2 blocks away. She drove without speaking for 15 minutes, heart still hammering in her chest. The woman sat in the back seat, silent, eyes closed, leaning on Scout. Marcus sat in the front, calm as ever. You knew, Rachel said finally, her voice hoarse. This whole time, I knew they'd come for her eventually, he said. She wasn't supposed to survive. What is she? Marcus turned his head slowly, looking at Rachel with the kind of gaze only someone who's seen too much can give. She's proof, he said, that they were doing more than taking care of old people. She's the last one. Last what? He didn't answer. That morning, Rachel called Tyler again. I have someone who needs protection, she said. Rachel, what the hell did you do? I saved a life. He came through, arranged a meeting with a private investigator tied to a whistleblower protection firm. The woman, Subject 15, now simply called Anna, was taken into a safe location. No one knew her real name yet. She barely spoke, but she was safe. Marcus disappeared not long after. Scout, he never left Rachel's side again. And every once in a while, late at night, Rachel would wake up to find him standing by the window, staring out into the dark like he still smelled something out there. Something unfinished. It had been 8 days since Rachel pulled Subject 15, now simply called Anna, out of room 319. 8 days of hiding. 8 days of waiting for something, anything, to happen. But no news came. No police, no investigation, no reporters at the gate, nothing. The facility remained open, business as usual, like none of it had happened. Rachel sat in her tiny living room, scrolling through news feeds on her phone, while Scout lay curled at her feet, one eye half open, ears twitching at every distant sound. Anna was asleep in the spare bedroom. She hadn't said more than a few full sentences since they'd brought her here. She ate in silence, slept in short bursts, flinched at loud noises. But the strange part, she never once cried, not even when the nightmares hit. Rachel finally broke the silence by calling Tyler again. "I don't understand," she said, pacing the hallway just outside the bedroom. "We rescued someone who wasn't even supposed to exist. Shouldn't the state be crawling all over that place by now?" "You're assuming anyone wants to look into it," Tyler replied. "Places like Willowbrook are built with insulation. Legal, financial, political. You pull one thread, and the whole thing could unravel. No one wants that. So we just pretend nothing happened. You did the right thing, Rachel. But if you're looking for justice, real justice, you might have to go digging." There was a pause on the line. "Look, I know a guy. Used to be with federal oversight. Now he's freelance. He's not cheap, but he's quiet, discreet, and thorough." Rachel sighed. "Give me his name." She met the investigator 2 nights later. He was a wiry man in his late 50s, with a voice that sounded like gravel and bourbon. Wore a battered bomber jacket, and a wedding ring that looked like it hadn't been taken off since the Reagan era. "Name's Harrison," he said, sliding into the booth at the back of a diner just off the I-5. "You Rachel?" She nodded, sliding the notebook across the table. Harrison didn't open it immediately. He just stared at the cover like it might bite him. "Where'd you get this?" "Room 318 at Willowbrook." That made him look up. His eyes narrowed. "You sure about that?" "I was there." He flipped it open page by page, line by line, occasionally grunting, sometimes muttering a curse under his breath. When he finally closed it, he leaned back. "This isn't elder care fraud. This is black bag stuff. Experimental programs buried under medical budgets. If even half of this is legit, someone went to a lot of trouble to disappear it. And now it's coming back," Rachel said quietly. Harrison tapped his fingers on the table. "There's a name in here, Dr. Vincent Kane. That ring any bells?" Rachel shook her head. "Used to work under the Department of Defense, Biobehavioral Division. Vanished from the public record in 2012. My guess, he went private. Took his research with him." Rachel's stomach turned. "What kind of research?" Harrison gave her a look. "The kind people give before saying something awful. The kind that reprograms trauma, memory deletion, emotional reconditioning, human test groups, most of them forgotten by their families. Easy targets." Rachel leaned in. "What do we do?" "We follow the money." The first break came 2 days later. Harrison called her at 4:17 in the morning. "Get dressed. Meet me at the records archive. Bring Scout." She did as told. They met in the parking lot of a state-run facility that looked like a DMV married a warehouse. Inside, Harrison flashed a badge she was pretty sure was fake, but good enough to get them in. They combed through boxes of old files, the kind that hadn't been digitized yet. Most were mundane. Meal plans, budget approvals, staff shift logs from a decade ago. But then Harrison found it. A transfer order. February 13, 2011. 5 patients relocated from Facility 8B, now Willowbrook West Wing, to unknown holding unit. Clearance level. Redacted. The names were blacked out. All except one. Anna L. "She's been there that long," Rachel whispered. Harrison nodded. "Long enough for everyone to forget she was even alive." He kept flipping until he stopped on a photocopied ID badge. "Vincent Kane, consultant, Willowbrook, special projects." There was an address scribbled on the back in pencil. "Looks like we're going for a drive," Harrison muttered. They found Kane's name tied to a shell company, registered out of Delaware, funneling consulting fees to an office in Santa Rosa. When they got there, The building was gutted. Stripped walls, torn carpet, empty file cabinets. Whoever had been there had cleared out fast. But Scout didn't seem convinced. He kept circling the far end of the room, sniffing along the edge of the baseboards. Then he barked. Rachel rushed over and found a narrow vent cover slightly ajar. Inside, stuffed between old insulation and a dead mouse, was a sealed manila folder. Inside the folder were photographs of Anna hooked to machines, monitored, watched. Page after page of biometric charts, brain scans, and chemical trial logs. One memo caught Rachel's eye. Subject 15 has shown rare memory resistance. Recommend indefinite confinement to prevent breach. She stared at the sentence, her hands trembling. She was the only one who remembered. Harrison nodded grimly. That's why they buried her. That night, back at home, Rachel showed Anna the photos. The woman didn't speak for a long time. She just looked at the pages in silence, flipping them slowly. Then finally she said, "My name's not Anna." Rachel blinked. "It's not. My name is Claire." She smiled barely. "I remember now." In the days that followed, Claire began to change. She ate more, slept longer, spoke in full conversations. Bits and pieces of her past came back. Parents, school, a brother named Dylan, who used to read comic books out loud at bedtime. She remembered being taken, remembered the needles, the isolation, but more than anything, she remembered a voice. "You're not real, Claire. You're what we made." She woke up screaming the first time she said that out loud. Scout was always there, jumping onto the bed, pressing his body against her like a weighted shield. And it worked. She always calmed down. Harrison disappeared, not long after delivering the last of the files to a contact he trusted in the press. The files never made it to print. Instead, Willowbrook quietly changed ownership. The website went offline, and room 318. It was sealed for real this time. Rachel stayed in touch with Claire, who moved to a protected residence out of state, under a new identity. Scout stayed with Rachel, older now, moving slower, but still watchful. One night as they sat on the porch, Rachel looked down at him and said, "You knew before anyone. You saw what none of us wanted to." He gave a soft whine, tail thumping once. She smiled. "Heroes come in all shapes, don't they?" Scout was slowing down. He still followed Rachel from room to room, like the loyal shadow he'd always been. But his pace was more deliberate now. Sometimes when he lay down, he gave a soft grunt like it took more effort than it used to. Rachel noticed it most in the mornings. He used to greet the day by racing to the door the moment he heard birds chirping. Now he lingered on his dog bed a little longer, lifting his head first, then his body. He had earned the rest, but something in his eyes told Rachel he wasn't done yet. Not while the silence lingered. Not while Willowbrook stood. Claire, now living under federal protection, had begun writing everything down. She filled notebook after notebook with fragmented memories. Names, faces, descriptions of long white hallways. A woman with a green clipboard. A smell like bleach and copper. One name came up more than any other. Vincent Kane. Rachel circled it every time it appeared. The government claimed Kane had been missing for years. Dead, some said. Retired abroad, said others. But Rachel didn't believe in ghosts, and Scout hadn't stopped pacing at night. One quiet Saturday, Rachel drove 2 hours south to visit Harrison. She hadn't seen him since he vanished after leaking the files. He'd gone off-grid, but Rachel knew where to find him. An old RV park tucked behind a dry canyon road. The kind of place where no one asked for last names. He greeted her with a thermos of black coffee, and the same gruff voice that somehow managed to sound kind. "You're not done, are you?" he said, handing her the mug. Rachel shook her head. "Neither is Scout." He glanced down at the old dog, who had curled up at Rachel's boots, but kept his eyes fixed on the dusty road behind them. Harrison lowered his voice. "I've been hearing whispers about something called Project Echo." Rachel looked up sharply. "What is it?" It was a behavioral reset program, off the books, funded through back channels, military private contractors, pharma. They used facilities like Willowbrook as cover, quiet patients, already forgotten, easy to test on. And Kane. Harrison sighed. He was the architect. That night, Rachel sat on her porch, Scout curled up beside her, watching the sky darken from orange to blue to black. She held Claire's latest notebook in her lap, flipping through pages filled with scribbled nightmares and broken memories. One passage stopped her cold. I was in the chair again, the humming sound in the wall. I remember Kane saying, "If it works on her, it works on anyone." And then the lights went out for a long time. Rachel closed the notebook. What if Claire wasn't the only one? What if Willowbrook still had more secrets? The next day, Rachel returned to the retirement home. Not officially. She parked 3 blocks away, dressed in a delivery uniform she borrowed from a friend, cap low over her face, clipboard in hand, a box labeled medical supplies in the trunk. Scout waited in the passenger seat, watching the building like a sentry. She timed it perfectly. Mid-lunch, when the front desk was least staffed, she walked in like she belonged. No one stopped her. She made it halfway down the east wing before she slipped into the old supply corridor that used to run behind rooms 310 to 320. She knew where to go. Room 321. Never mentioned in files, never lit from the outside, but always quiet. She pressed her ear to the wall and froze. There it was. The humming, faint, low, constant, like a machine behind drywall. She pulled out her phone and recorded it. Just 30 seconds, enough proof that something was still active. Then she slipped out, back home. Scout sniffed her hands before she even said a word. "You were right," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "There's something still going on." She sent the recording to Harrison. He responded 5 minutes later with a single line. "That's not just electricity. That's frequency modulation. Neural field tech." Rachel typed back, "What the hell is neural field?" Harrison called, "It's neural interference. The military tried it on PTSD patients in the early 2000s. Kane developed a prototype, supposed to suppress traumatic memories. Didn't work. Too many side effects. Rage, dissociation, hallucinations." "They're still running it?" Rachel asked. "They are if they're desperate enough to keep the past buried." Rachel knew she couldn't do this alone anymore. She went to see Tyler. He met her at a diner halfway between their homes, nervously stirring his coffee before she even sat down. "You're going to get yourself killed," he said without greeting. "I'm not walking away," Rachel said. "You saw the files. You know what they did." "Yeah, and I also know how many people buried this thing. Layers." "Rachel, bureaucratic cement. You dig too far and it's your name they erase next." "I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for help." Tyler sighed, rubbed his face, then leaned forward. "There's a hearing coming up," he whispered. "Unrelated case. But one of the contractors tied to Kane is being called to testify. If we get a subpoena on record, even just mentioning Willowbrook, it forces a paper trail." Rachel's heart raced. How long? 10 days. 10 days felt like an eternity. Rachel kept a low profile. But every night, Scout stood at the window, watching, waiting. Then on day 6 it happened. Rachel came home from the grocery store to find her front door cracked open. Scout growled before they even crossed the porch. Inside, the place had been ransacked. Not like a robbery. No broken glass, no missing TV. But the notebooks were gone. Claire's notebooks, all of them. Except for one. The oldest one. The one from room 318. It was left on the kitchen counter, open to a single page. A photograph was paper clipped to it. A black and white security cam still of Rachel and Scout walking out of room 319. On the back of the photo, written in red ink, "You're being watched. Walk away." Rachel didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor beside Scout's bed, one hand on his fur, the other gripping the page. "This is how they scare people," she whispered. "Make it quiet, personal, make you doubt what's worth saving." Scout nuzzled her hand, and she knew she wasn't backing down. 2 days later, Tyler called again. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Someone leaked the Willowbrook files to the Oversight Committee. Public Health Division." Rachel's stomach dropped. "What?" "They're opening an inquiry. Quiet for now. But it's real. We've got traction." Her hands trembled. "Finally. They'll want a witness," he added. "Someone who saw it firsthand. Someone the public can connect to." Rachel looked down at Scout. "He never left my side," she said softly. "Then bring him too." The night before the hearing, Rachel went out onto the porch again. The stars were out. Air crisp. Scout curled beside her in his usual spot. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the old ID badge she'd found weeks ago. Vincent Kane. She hadn't said his name out loud in days, but tonight she did. "I don't know where you are," she said, staring into the dark, "but I know you're still out there, watching, hiding, waiting." She paused. "And I'm not scared of you." Scout let out a soft bark like an agreement. She smiled. "Tomorrow we speak." The hearing was held in a modest government building, just off the state capitol. No flashing lights, no swarm of reporters, just a slow trickle of officials, aides and a few members of the public seated in rows of wooden chairs under buzzing fluorescent lights. Rachel sat at the front, one hand resting on Scout's back. He was calm, composed, wearing a soft gray vest with the words "Therapy Dog, Retired K9" stitched on the side. He wasn't here for show. He was here as a witness too, in the only way he could be. The room smelled like stale coffee and cheap paper, but to Rachel, it smelled like justice. They called her name just before noon. She stood, walked to the microphone, and sat up straight, heart pounding. She had practiced this. She had read her statement a dozen times. But when she looked at the panel, 5 people in suits, one with tired eyes behind thick glasses, she didn't read from the page. She spoke from memory. "My name is Rachel Hayes. I'm a registered nurse. I've worked at multiple care facilities across this state. But what I'm here to talk about, what happened at Willowbrook, was never about care. It was about control. And the people they hurt were the ones no one thought to ask about." She paused. Behind her, Scout let out a soft exhale, like a grounding presence. Rachel continued. "I'm talking about a patient known as Subject 15. A woman named Claire. She was held without registration, without consent, and used in illegal experiments involving neurosuppression, all under the supervision of a man named Vincent Kane, whose name and funding trail connect directly to private contractors with military ties." Murmurs spread across the chamber. One of the board members looked up sharply. Rachel didn't stop. "I found her. I got her out. And I'm here today because if I didn't speak, no one else would. But I'm not the hero in this story." She turned gently, placing her hand on Scout's shoulder. "He is." Scout raised his head slightly, eyes scanning the room. "He's the reason I knew something was wrong. He's the one who refused to walk past that locked door. He's the one who saw what we didn't want to. He never gave up, even when we did. He reminded me that truth doesn't bark softly. Sometimes it howls." After her statement, the questions came. "Where's Claire now? What evidence do you have of Kane's direct involvement? Why didn't you go to the police earlier?" Some questions were fair. Some were barbed. Some clearly meant to cast doubt. But Rachel answered every one. She referenced Harrison's files, Claire's medical scans, the facility's medication records, the biometric scanner, hidden behind room 308. She showed them the photo of her and Scout leaving room 319. The one left behind by whoever ransacked her home. I was told to walk away, she said. Instead, I walked in. The final witness that day was unexpected. A man in a gray suit entered the room, flanked by two plainclothes officers. Rachel's heart stopped. Vincent Kane, older now, hair white, skin thin and drawn, but his eyes still sharp, still cold. The board chair leaned into the microphone. Dr. Kane, you've been subpoenaed to appear under federal review. You may decline to answer, but we are authorized to continue proceedings in your absence. Kane didn't speak right away. Then he looked directly at Rachel. You have no idea what we were doing, he said, his voice steady. You think we were monsters. You don't understand the world we were trying to protect. Rachel stared back. You weren't protecting the world. You were hiding from it. Kane shook his head, almost pitying. Claire was unstable. You have no idea what she was capable of. Rachel stood. I know what you were capable of, and I won't let you hide it anymore. The room was quiet when the hearing adjourned. Rachel stepped out into the late afternoon sun. Scout beside her. The air felt different, lighter. Harrison met her outside. He didn't say much, just handed her a manila envelope. Whistleblower protections are in place, he said. The press will pick it up by morning. Claire's safe. You did good. Rachel nodded. She deserves her life back. You all do. That night, Rachel drove back home with Scout in the passenger seat, his head resting against the window, eyes half closed. The radio played soft folk music. The sun dipped below the trees. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like she was being followed. She made dinner. Nothing fancy. Grilled cheese tomato soup. Scout sat on his usual mat near the table. Halfway through eating, she looked at him and smiled. Think we'll ever get used to normal again? He wagged his tail once. 2 weeks later, the headlines broke. Illegal human experiments tied to Willowbrook facility. Retired nurse and K9. Expose hidden medical program. Where is Vincent Kane? No one had seen him since the hearing. But the damage was done. The investigations widened. Other facilities were named. Other victims began to surface. Some still alive, most still forgotten. Claire became the face of a quiet movement. Anonymous interviews, blurred features. But her voice, stronger now, reached people. Rachel declined most interviews. She didn't want fame. She wanted closure. One evening Claire called. I remembered something else, she said. Rachel leaned against the kitchen counter, holding the phone with one hand, Scout's bowl in the other. What is it? There was a phrase they used before every session. Kane would whisper it before the lights went on. Rachel waited. He'd say, you'll forget who you are before the world remembers what we did. Rachel closed her eyes. Not anymore, she said. The world remembers now. 3 months passed. Rachel went back to nursing at a small community clinic. Nothing secret, nothing hidden. Just people who needed care, and someone to care enough to see them. Scout came to work with her twice a week. The patients adored him. On his off days he slept more, walked less, but he still barked when something didn't feel right. She trusted him more than any protocol. One evening, after locking up the clinic, Rachel sat with Scout on the back steps. The sky above was orange and fading, the kind of summer twilight that made everything feel possible again. She scratched behind his ears. You saved lives, Scout, more than you'll ever know. He leaned into her hand, a soft huff of contentment. Funny, she whispered, how the world thought you were retired, but you never really stopped working, did you? She looked up at the stars. Some heroes wear uniforms, others wear fur. Thank you so much for following this story through every twist, secret, and howl in the night. It's been an emotional journey, and a reminder that truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just barks and waits for someone to listen. Now I want to hear from you.
What would you have done if Scout barked at a locked door and no one else believed him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that celebrate animal heroes, justice, and the people who refuse to look away, please share this one with someone who needs it. From all of us at Saved by Tales, thank you.